the beginning that you have made.
Why do we need leadership now? It's because we're in a crisis of leadership now. Globalization, democratization, and the internet have completely changed the requirements for great leadership. I think that with Nixon, the breakdown of trust and the breakdown of credibility of our leaders really started happening. That people just didn't feel they could blindly be obedient to the leaders or blindly trust their leaders. But this is not only happening in the area of politics. It's also happening with doctors and patients, for example, that now we don't trust our doctors necessarily to say what's right for us. We want to have rights as patients, and we're going to check the internet, WebMD, or some other websites for the right answers. Whereas our parents were still blindly trusting the doctor. Oh, he's a doctor, he must know the truth, he's a demigod. And this is also happening in other areas like product development, that now end users are participating in designing windsurfing equipment or designing technology with Google, for example, that as a company you now have to be much more open to the leadership in the market. They even call it actually lead users. So my basic assertion is that leadership is now spreading, and it's much more available through the internet, through democratization, through globalization, to people like you and I. And so in the 21st century, I believe you have to have three qualities above all, which are the three C's, I call them. You have to be a co-leader instead of a top-down leader. You have to be a coach or co-leader. Number two, you have to be a great communicator, which includes listening. And number three, you have to be a cross-culturally savvy person, which means to be able to stand in the shoes of the other side and see the world from their point of view, not just your point of view.
As you describe it, it sounds like a positive thing, but there must be a downside to this. Where's the other edge? Where's the other edge to that sword?
Right. It's unfortunate, but the financial crisis and the economic crisis, which really, in my view, is ultimately a leadership crisis, a crisis of morality, a crisis of ethics, has reminded us that when you spread leadership very thin, and a lot of people can lead, that also a lot of scum gets to the surface, right? So people rise to leadership positions who actually might not have deserved in other eras to be leaders. And so it behooves us to be even more vigilant, to have the right values inculcated in people that we have forgotten.
Well, where do those values get reasserted?
I have developed an approach to leadership which I actually was surprised to find is already in the Ten Commandments. For example, to have no idols really reminds us to not have a false vision, even if the whole culture is claiming for it, clamoring for it, and people say, yeah, just make money quickly and here are credit derivatives. To actually go back and say, is this truly an authentic vision for me? Or, am I somebody who does idle talk, gives false testimony? Or am I somebody who speaks and listens authentically and deeply with other people? Because if I was actually listening correctly, I would assert that this whole financial crisis would not have happened. That people would have never gotten away with it were it not for a conspiracy of silence around those very strange ideas that people had about making money quickly. Instead of just going forward, we actually need to go back to the root causes of this current leadership crisis, which may be actually that we've lost our roots. The Jews are the people of the book. I actually have researched the book the last 7 years, which is called The Rabbi and the CEO. I wrote it with Rabbi Raskin together. And it's basically, the subtitle is The 10 Commandments for 21st Century Leaders. I don't know why, but we always write the books that we ourselves need to read. I have always tried to integrate the different worlds. I am Swiss and American. I'm an American citizen and a Swiss citizen, and I've always seen both worlds, the European perspective and the American perspective. I am Jewish because my mother is Jewish, but my father was Christian, and so I had both sides of the Jewish versus Christian. I'm a businessman, but I'm also an academic and a writer. And so I see the perspective from the academia and the theory, but I also see the perspective of the action. I am very conservative, but I'm also very progressive in a way. High-tech, but also 19th century. Old values from Winston Churchill, but new values from Google. The idea was basically to bring together the worlds of Judaism and the world of technology and leadership of the 21st century. When Faraday married chemistry and physics, he generated a new field which was called electricity. So I believe that innovation actually comes now from integrating disparate fields and not so much from going deeper into one field. One of the things that people need to master now is the art of listening and not only speaking, not only be like Reagan or Martin Luther King, who were great speakers, but also to be a great listener. If you make strategy in the boardroom in isolation and you don't listen to your people, you will make strategy that is totally wrong. So in my view, the time of the great leaders like Churchill, JFK, FDR, Golda Meir is over, because the world is just too complex for one individual human being to know everything. I would assert that in the next few years, the boards of directors of major Fortune 500 companies, the global companies, will no longer be Americans or Europeans or white. They will be from countries like India, China, Brazil, maybe Russia, Indonesia, the big emerging markets that have the biggest middle classes in the world. It makes sense, right? So in order to serve these people, you also need the leadership in those companies to reflect those consumers. And so how do you deal with people in the board of directors that have a totally different value system from your own? Decoding another culture. And you know, I'll give you an example. I lived in India about 20 years ago to do work there, and I learned less about the culture of India, and I learned much more about my own culture. My expectations about quality, about being on time, about reliability, about customer service, whatever the things are that are from my culture, unconsciously inherited. And I actually had to open myself up to the fact that there was another way of doing it in India, which might actually be effective also. And I had to become more of a global citizen. And if there's one thing that I could ask of us in Israel, would be to embrace the fact that our way is not the only way. And I know we've had a, kind of a defensive posture since 1948, literally since the foundation of the country, where we felt like everybody is attacking us and we have to defend ourselves, and there was no time to question ourselves. But at the same time, I think in order to be a great leader, you have to question yourself. Even Rashi in the Torah said, "I don't know," several times, and he had the humility to say, "I don't know." And so I assert that you have to be somebody who explores and inquires and doesn't always already know the answer.